Hey new bodies, coming back with another episode, this time taking a break from our 10 principles to talk to you about protein. Protein is the focus of my diet. It's what I try to get the most of. I eat a diet that's primarily made up of proteins and fats, and I generally try to avoid carbs, but primarily the only carbs I eat really fiber-based carbs, so really talking about vegetables here. I stay away from sugar and starch as much as I possibly can. So it's not just about having a high level of protein, which for me is roughly about 90 to 110, 120 grams a day. And there's a great rule of thumb that I just saw in a Runner's World article for people who are fit and active, trying to stay healthy and work out and make sure they've got strong muscles and a good recovery from their workouts. They recommend about 0.6 grams for every pound of body fat. Now you remember from an earlier episode I had talked about a ratio for your lean body mass. So you actually need to know your weight and your percent body fat to then apply that to. This is definitely an easier one because most people know their weight or can figure it out pretty quickly. You can get a scale or access to a scale pretty simply. So 0.6 grams for every pound of body fat. They say for a person who's 150 pounds of weight, that equates to 90 grams of protein. And if you look at the FDA's recommendations, that's definitely high. Now, I even go over that. And the FDA says, there's concerns with your kidneys, and basically they believe that after a certain amount, your body just flushes it out. So getting as many as 90 grams really doesn't do you any benefit. I found this not to be the case. I don't have any kidney function issues. I recently just had blood work done about a month ago. Everything's perfectly fine. As I say, I'm getting typically over 100 grams in a given day. So no effect on my kidneys. As I said, I also have a very high fat level in my diet. My body fat is generally very low. It's a little high right now, or high for me, just as I recover from an injury in my foot and the holidays, which I will admit I'm still recovering from that. So high protein diet and not worrying about fat so much. It's really the carb side of the equation that you want to think about reducing, and primarily the sugar and the starch piece of carbs. The third type of carb out there is fiber, and that's what most vegetables are made out of. And any other carbs that they have in them, sugars or starch, it's harder for your body to process because the fiber slows everything down. So I do get carbs, but it's primarily fiber. So let's focus on protein. It's not just about getting that 0.6 grams per pound of body fat as a rough rule of thumb. It's also about when and how you get them. So I've been studying this a lot over the years, and there's a really strong sentiment that you should try to get at least 30 grams of protein within the first 30 minutes after waking. So it's about a third of that recommended 90 gram level for a 150 pound person. And you want to get it within the first 30 minutes, and this actually, if you do this over time, it starts to signal to your body how it should metabolize the calories it gets during the day. And it should focus on protein as your fuel source and sort of putting aside the other calories it gets and not taking them in and storing them as most people would have happen when they take in carbs or fat. So a protein-rich diet is going to do two things for you. It's going to focus on your muscles. That's the fuel that your muscles need, and that's the fuel that your muscles use to repair themselves. So it gets them working and it repairs them, which is really crucial if you're trying to work out more and advance your health. But the other side of it is it really triggers your metabolism and the way your body stores and uses energy to sort of ignore the bad stuff that ends up making us fatter people. Now you may say, didn't you just say you eat a lot of fat? But I have a very low body fat, and that's primarily because of the protein levels in my diet. And it's not the fat that you eat that causes you to be fat, it's the carbs that you eat that cause you to be fat. Now I can't really spend enough time on this subject, but there is a fantastic book out there. It's long, there's a lot to it, but I've done a review of it. It's called Why We Get Fat, and it's going to have a link right here that I can put up on the screen. It's a great book. I do recommend you read it if you don't believe the idea that it's not as simple as calories in, calories out, but you push back against the idea that carbs might be the problem, and you're more of a traditionalist who thinks eating fat is a bad thing, then I strongly urge you to read the entire book. If, like me, you're skeptical that eating fat is such a bad thing and that carbs may not be so great, then you can sort of skip through the first 10 chapters, which really try to just convince you that the whole notion of calories in, calories out is flawed, because you see people who, starve themselves and work out like crazy and they remain fat. So if you can let go of that notion, you can skip the first 10 chapters quite a bit, jump into chapter 11, and that's really where he explains to you what it is we can do to bring our body fat down and control our body composition better. So again, it's called Why We Get Fat, and I will post up a link right here. It's a great book. But let's talk about why we're here today, protein. So there's a couple ways you can sort of get that high load of protein first thing in the morning, but they take some work. And the question is, if you get up, maybe you have people in the house that are still asleep, are you going to be cooking eggs or making lentils or whatever it is, making a lot of noise? Probably not a great idea. So I've got 2 tricks that I use. The first is I do eat eggs first thing in the morning, sometimes with lentils, sometimes not. But what I do is I make omelets ahead of time. So I usually make anywhere from 2 to 4 nights of omelets ahead of time, or I'll make a frittata and cut it into 4 pieces, 5 pieces, something like that. And I'll just stick it in the fridge, each one on a plate, or I'll put it in a Pyrex or something. And you heat that up in the morning. You can do that in a toaster oven if you don't want to use a microwave. You can do it in a microwave if you have access to it and you're comfortable with that. But it's already made. That's a much quieter way of getting that thing up to heat than to start frying first thing in the morning and potentially wake people up. There's also less of a smell in the air, which some people do wake up when they smell food cooking. So for me, it's an omelet that I've made the night before, at least, maybe a couple nights before, and I heat that up pretty quickly. But the second piece of the puzzle, because that's only going to get me anywhere from 9 to 15 grams of protein, depending if I've got lentils in the mix or if it's a particularly big omelet or not. So I need to look to something else. And there's a couple of other quick things that I use. One is my New Body's slow carb bars, which I'll do in more detail soon. I'll do a piece on those, but you can get those at newbody/bars. We have a number of different flavors and about to launch a vegan and gluten-free line. Right now they're whey based, so they're not vegan, but they are gluten-free. So we will have a vegan and gluten-free line shortly. But the other thing I do, and I'm looking to my side because that's where the product is I use a protein shake. And there's a couple brands that I've been using, and it really depends on what I want to put in my body. The first I'll talk about is whey protein, and that comes from dairy. So milk has 2 kinds of proteins in it. One is casein, which is the most prevalent. It's about 80% of the protein load in dairy. And the other is whey. Casein takes a very long time for your body to process. It's actually a really good protein to last you throughout the day. It takes about 7 or 8 hours to completely process and enter your muscles. That's great if you're not active, because when your muscles aren't active, they're not going to sort of use up that protein quickly. Whey, on the other hand, is about 20% of the protein in milk. So you think about Miss Muffet eating her curds and whey. That's a piece of that rhyme. So whey is one of the proteins in milk. It's highly usable very quickly by your body. So I said 7 or 8 hours or so for casein to be totally absorbed. Whey is usually within 30 minutes, maybe up to 60 minutes, depending on your body. So that means it's probably too fast for your muscles to absorb if you're at rest. So whey is typically talked about for people who have just worked out. So right after workout, you gulp a shake with whey or you eat something with whey. Cottage cheese is primarily just whey. So you take that in, and essentially you're giving your muscles, when they're ready for it, you're giving them the energy or the fuel they need to repair themselves. The other time you can use it is just as you're about to work out. So you take it in and you immediately start working your muscles, because they're going to start grabbing the fuel that you give them. So whey is one option, and there's really only one whey that I recommend, and it's from a company called robb. That's his picture right there in the bag. It's a really nice product. It's RBGH free, so it doesn't have any of the bovine growth hormone added to it. I particularly like the chocolate. I've had the vanilla as well. Not crazy about the unflavored, but this is an 80-ounce bag. It's pretty big. It's also really expensive. This bag runs anywhere from $100 to $120. So robb is definitely expensive stuff, but it's really nice. And he does sweeten it, but he sweetens it with stevia, which is the only sweetener that I will touch. It's natural, so it's not putting the chemicals in your body, but it's also not sugar. which I'm definitely against. Most of the whey products I see out there are going to be sweetened with sucralose, which is the generic name for Splenda. You got to stay away from the stuff. It has the same impact on your insulin in your body as sugar, so you're basically not getting any benefit. You're just loading your body with man-made chemicals. Not cool at all. So Robb's protein, you can get the totally unflavored one if you like, but I happen to like the chocolate. It mixes really smoothly and evenly, and it's really delicious. But some people have issues with whey. It can cause gastric distress for some. It can make you gassy because it does digest so quickly. That's one of the reasons. Some people just naturally have an issue with dairy proteins. This isn't lactose intolerance, which is an issue with the dairy sugar. This is the protein intolerance to either whey, casein, or both of them, the two proteins in milk. So some people won't want to use this. And also, if you're vegan, you wouldn't want to use this because it comes from dairy, and so you're not going to touch dairy products. So one option, but again, I'd only use this if you're using it right before working out or right after. So if you wake up, within the first 30 minutes, you're going to take a shake with this in it, and sort of get right on, whatever piece of equipment, or start with your weights or whatever it is you're doing. But don't do this and then commute, and an hour later don't go over to the gym or something like that. It's going to be out of your system by now. So whey is the first one, and this one has, let's see how many grams of protein in a shake. I believe it's 20 to 25 grams. Yeah, so pretty good load. So this with one of my protein bars and an omelet, you get to your 30 grams really quickly. Actually, you get more like 40, 45. So that's the Robb protein. The one that I'm really a big fan of right now is from this company, Garden of Life. This is the vanilla and the chocolate, and they have some other flavors and unflavored as well. This is totally vegan and totally gluten-free. So it's a plant-based protein. It's a really nice product. It's not cheap, but it's not quite as expensive as the Robb stuff. This is 22 ounces. It sells for about $40 for one of these canisters. So in that respect, it's more expensive than Robb. But I do find it on sale really frequently at Whole Foods. Typically it's between $25, and I just saw it yesterday for $29. But a lot of times there's also a $5 off coupon. So I had those coupons and the sale price, and it was buy one get one free, so I stocked up on it. But you can really do that. So if you have access to a Whole Foods and they have this Garden of Life raw product, if you want to try one, they have this single serve pack so you can see if you like it or not. And you can sort of take it from there. If you do like it, I urge you to stock up when it's on sale. It does keep for a bit. So I basically have like 10 canisters of this that I got when I had those coupons and the sale price and the buy one get one free. And that brings the price down pretty considerably. So this is not quite as high in protein as the Robb product. It's 17 grams per serving. And this is, I said, vanilla, and there's the chocolate. It's cacao-based chocolate. They also have one with sort of like a cinnamon chai, which I don't personally care for, but if you like chai, that's it's a great option. They've got a totally unflavored one, and then they have a mocha one that uses Marley coffee and their cacao. So you can mix these up just with water. You can make them with almond milk if you like, but I just mix them with water. They have a little bit of a chalkiness to them that most vegetable proteins will have. The Robb product really doesn't at all. It just tastes kind of like a chocolate shake, but they're not bad. But what I like to do with these is I don't have them straight up. So I will cut them 50-50 with raw cacao powder. This is Navitas cacao powder. You can get this at Amazon at a great price. They have it on Subscribe and Save, so you can save additionally. You can get it at Whole Foods or really a lot of different places. This is a nice organic brand. I use a lot of their products. It's really good stuff. So I'll have a scoop of this and a scoop of the shake, either the chocolate or the vanilla. Cuts in really well. And I will add a couple of other things. So the first is cinnamon. I love the flavor of cinnamon, but cinnamon also helps with insulin regulation. So that will help you cut your body fat as well. And the last thing is cayenne pepper. You might think that's a bit crazy, but a little shake of cayenne, you're probably not going to notice it, and cayenne helps with your metabolism, but it also helps with regulating inflammation in the body. So cayenne is really a fantastic thing, and you also will grow insensitive to it. So the more you use it over time, the less sensitive you become to it, the less you're going to notice that heat. So you can start to work it into your diet without having much of a a sense that, this is hot and peppery. If you have really bad reflux, acid reflux, this may not be the right thing for you, but give it a try and see if it works. If not, you can skip it. But I give a shake of cayenne and a few shakes of cinnamon into my mixture and shake that up. If I'm not doing it for breakfast, because it's a little bit to work with, but if I have one at lunch or dinner, I'm actually also going to add in spirulina. So this is from a company called Pure Hawaiian. They have it at Whole Foods. They have it at Amazon. Spirulina is not the best tasting stuff in the world, but it's essentially a product made from algae. You do need to be really careful about where you get it from, who the provider is, what waters it comes out of. More contaminated waters, obviously, that's not going to be a great product. But I've tested a few, and I really do like this Pure Hawaiian product. It's got a very strong, sort of like seaweedy kind of flavor to it. It's not the most appealing thing in the world, so if I'm going to add this, I'll typically add in another pack of stevia just to try to offset the flavor. But it's really, really good for you. I just don't do it first thing in the morning because it's such a strong taste. And it's actually a little bit difficult to work with. If you spill it, it gets all over you. It actually takes quite a bit of scrubbing to get off your fingers. It's a very sort of tacky powder. But spirulina is a good thing to add. But putting the spirulina aside, putting the cinnamon and cayenne aside, and putting the cacao aside, they're all optional. They're just what I use. There's 3 ways that you can mix these things up. You could use a blender, but again, first thing in the morning, or if you travel, it's not usually an option. So I use this. It's called a blender bottle. It's got water in it, but it also has a little metal ball in it. So you can see that there down at the bottom. So that just helps sort of whisk the powder together. Shaking it for 10-20 seconds is usually good enough. The robb stuff mixes up really quickly. Garden of Life usually takes a little bit more shaking, but it's not that bad. I also have a travel version of it. It's more of a water bottle. It's got a loop on it, so you can throw a carabiner on it and clip it to your backpack, for example. You can hear that whisk ball inside. And lastly, this is another thing. They sell it, some GNCs or stuff. I got this one off the internet. It's got a battery in it, and it essentially has a little spinning stirrer that creates this vortex. This doesn't work too well for the Garden of Life because it's too thick, but it works really well for the robb stuff. So it's another option. You can sort of pour the powder in as it's making its vortex, and it mixes up pretty smoothly. You can even throw a couple ice cubes in. But it's really easy. You can do this in a matter of seconds. You can get it on sale, and you can spike your protein intake first thing in the morning, and it's not disgusting. It's not this sort of overly chemical, fake way of doing things. These products are all really good products, really high quality, very clean. The Garden of Life is certified organic, vegan, gluten-free. It's great stuff. It's really high quality, and it's really clean. The robb, when it comes to whey, it's very hard to find things that are totally organic or totally clean, and robb's done a great job of sourcing that. And it tastes great without having a lot of the chemicals that are in there. And the nice thing with the robb product and some others is it's whey protein isolate, which means it's isolated from the rest of the dairy product. So it doesn't have the lactose in it. I'm lactose intolerant, so I couldn't use this if it had lactose. So it's a lot to take in, but I would say you can't go wrong with Garden of Life. If you don't have a problem with having dairy products, or you're not allergic to whey or have an issue with whey, robb's great stuff. But I'd say, go to your local Whole Foods, get a sample of the Garden of Life, give it a try, and work that protein into your diet. It's a great way to start and enlighten your body.